Eugene, I just want to say thank you so much for agreeing to be a guest on the podcast today. Which has been a big year for you, world's fastest accountant. So I want to start off by just saying congratulations on such a big year. Um,
Thank you.
and I want to find out a little bit about your experience in Budapest. So, I mean, that was your first kind of major outdoor global
Mm,
championship. Um, yeah, I'd love for you to just kind of talk us through that experience. And
yeah,
was it kind of as you expected it would be?
yeah. I think it's interesting. So obviously, I got my first fest at the European Indoors.
Mhm.
That was my first sort of taste of any sort of senior international level competition. And I think the mindset I had there, I kind of, it was a weird. I wouldn't say I was a deer in headlights, but being at that champs, it was more like sort of trying to take in the experience and looking around and learning and trying to pick up what I could pick up. So I think actually that experience served me really, really well for Budapest, where I went there. It was more like, okay, I earned my spot here, and all right, cool. Now let's go take care of business. So I think going to Budapest was sort of like, I'm not going to change anything about my usual sort of prep mentally, physically, whatever, going into races. So obviously, I know it's a world championships, but I wasn't telling myself like, oh, you're going to a world championship, you're going to be racing some of the fastest guys in the world. So I had a very, very sort of chill mindset to it. And I didn't really have any expectations of how it was going to feel. The only thing for me was like, because I believe a lot in like, I think mental fatigue is a thing. So I didn't want to get too up for it too soon, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I wanted to sort of naturally let myself get there. So I remember being in the holding camp a couple of weeks before and sort of just enjoying the vibes in the holding camp, making sure I was getting good work in, eating well, sleeping well, and not really thinking about the championship, really and truly, just sort of, preparing each day, training as usual. And then obviously as we get closer to competition, we left the holding camp, went to the actual hotel in Budapest for the championship. And then it's like, okay, you start to let those feelings come in of, okay, cool, this is the World Athletics Championship. I always used to say to people, because a lot of people don't really know track and field like that are my friends or whatever. So I'll be like, I'm going to the World Cup of track
Right.
and field.
Right.
And
Okay.
then
Yeah.
they'd be like, okay, do you know what I mean? So they got it. But yeah, for me, I tried to keep it super chill in terms of how I was thinking about it. And I think the Budapest, it just, like I said, it felt natural, it felt normal. I earned my spot. I believe that, I had every right to be there. And I very much conducted myself as I'm not just here to make up numbers.
Mhm.
Whereas I feel like in Istanbul indoors, not that I went there happy to just be there. Of course, I had goals and aspirations there too. But with Worlds, it was sort of no, I'm coming here to compete. I'm coming here to run hard. I'm coming here to have fun, of course. I'm coming here to give glory to God, of course. But no, it was I'd say all in all, from watching, obviously, I mean, I started tracking 2018, and I've watched many a world championship from my sofa at home. And I can't imagine what I thought it would be like at that time, but definitely going there, there's a special energy about it, I'd say, for sure. The Hungarian fans are really, really good. I mean, it's crazy energy in the stadium, beautiful track. So no, it's just I just thought of it as a massively enjoyable experience, but nothing that I was overawed by or anything like that. Like I think I actually handled it very well and took it in my stride. Obviously, considering my slightly unique
Yeah.
journey into track and field.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic. And I guess as well, kind of the experience of kind of going through that, like you said, whilst you weren't overawed by it, still there's things that you can take from that that help you in your preparation for Paris next year as well, right?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing probably is just feeling these guys. So obviously, unfortunately, other than what Reese and Zarnell, who are other Brits, so obviously I raced them at trials.
Mhm.
The only other guy at the World Championships, like top guys. I mean,
Yeah.
sorry, everybody at Worlds is top guys, but as in like I'm talking about,
Medal contenders
your
kind of thing.
yeah. The
Yeah.
only one I'd raced was Omanyala.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hadn't raced any of the other guys. So I think that's probably one of the parts of my CV, if you will, of my kind of experience and repertoire that's got a massive gap just by virtue of the fact of, I've started the sport, only 5 years ago, and I've only
Yeah.
been at the level I'm at now let's say since, well, just the season just gone, 2023, really, because I hadn't run, you know, anything close to what I ran this year until, well, I say anything close, I ran 10:05 last year, but so yeah, I think for me, that was the biggest thing I took from it. It's like, okay, I've, having Hakim Sunny Brown next to me, my semi-final, and I remember getting out and thinking, my goodness, he's not only has he got out too, he's ahead of me. Thinking, I'm thinking, what's going on here, kind of thing, and I just think if I was more used to, feeling these guys next to me, I would have been able to lock in even more to my own thing and not kind of get drawn out of my usual race pattern. So I think that was probably one thing that, okay, if I could have raced these guys more often. So I think for me, definitely that was the biggest thing that I definitely took from those championships. It's okay, I've felt these guys a little bit, but I definitely need to make sure that I'm feeling them a lot more in the season. So, God willing, next year I'll be making, well, obviously, I've got a good race agent, so hopefully I'll be getting in those meets.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. It's not something I actually considered too much, that it was obviously on paper, like your time that you run this year, that that put you kind of right in the mix with a lot of the guys at that level, but actually like physically racing them, that hadn't really happened too much. And I guess like, again, on paper you knew what to expect from them, but actually having that sort of like first-hand feel of what it's like, I can imagine that that's sort of another level. It's just an experience that again would probably be fairly unique, and without having gone through it, then you can't really imagine what that's like. But I guess
100%.
that sets you up like great for next year, right? You've come into this without that experience. Obviously, you've represented yourself very well at the World Championships, and now you kind of got that extra like feather in your cap. I think that's the right saying, that you've got that now. Like you say, you had that a little bit of a gap on your CV with that regards. Now you've kind of filled that gap. Then it makes you more qualified for next season to go and build upon what you've done this year. And I think that the comment that you made, I think that leads us on quite nicely to the next thing I wanted to speak about. So obviously you ran a 10:0 last year, which I hope you don't mind me saying was kind of like a bit of a, if you look at your performances, that was, you had this one performance kind of up there, and then the rest, there was a little bit of a gap before your next few times. Whereas this season you went out, you ran 9:9, so you improved your sort of like absolute best performance, but then you had a lot of other performances that were around that kind of like 10:0 area. So I'd describe it kind of like as a breakthrough season, sort of in both regards. Firstly, obviously, you've run 9, and then secondly, you've been consistent, like right around that 10:0. And I just want, do you have any ideas as to what kind of like contributed to that breakthrough season in 2023 for you?
Yeah, I think it was a couple of things. I think something that I experienced in the indoor season, and one of the reasons why I've got a love-hate relationship with 60 meters. A love-hate relationship with 60 meters, because the race is too short.
Right.
And any small, if you're not like 10 out of 10, it's done. The race is done. If your reaction time is not on point, the race is done. Like, the margin for error is so small in the 60, like even more so than the 100. And I just don't like that aspect of it. I also don't like the aspect of running up a ramp and slamming into a wall, but that's a whole other conversation. But one of the things that I found out during the indoor season was that I was trying to run the race on my own terms. And it was like I was having super slow reaction times and coming back like a train, but it just wasn't really working out for me. So one of the immediate changes after my indoor season, I actually changed my block setup.
Okay.
So one of the things I did indoors, I was a little bit close to the line. The idea being that I could get going quicker. But it was actually putting me in a suboptimal position, like out of the blocks, which wasn't really helping me. So one of the first things I changed, just an easy thing, was just, okay, I'm moving my blocks back. So I've got a little bit more space to actually get into the position that I want. That was the first thing. The second thing was mindset of, I need to stop thinking about my start. Do you know what I mean? When the gun goes, run. And I've done all the training, so my body's going to do you know what I mean? Hopefully do the right thing. So I think the second thing was, just forget about the start. When I hear the gun, just run. So I had this whole mindset of, as soon as that gun goes, I am taking absolute control of this race. And I'm going to do it like it's all going to be on my terms because I'm going to make sure. So I remember my first race in Wetzlar, Germany, and I was getting unbelievable starts in that meet. And because of training and whatever else, I hadn't quite, peaked in terms of where I wanted to be training wise. So I'd get to like 70, 80, and I didn't quite have as much gas, but I was getting out like incredibly well. And I remember my coach saying to me, like, your starts are like world class. So I think that was another thing, is the mindset of, okay, I'm going to take absolute ownership of this race, like immediately. Another thing, so I don't think I always used my body very well. What I mean by that is, obviously we've got different limbs and different ways a sprinter can kind of generate leverage and momentum. And my arms was one of the big things that I wasn't using in the most optimal way. And it's another thing that my coach actually picked up on, was I was very forearmy in my arm action.
Okay.
So I was kind of, I wasn't really using the sort of full rotation or full cycle of my arms.
So
So I
do you
was
mean
sort of
by that
cutting
like it
off.
was coming from the elbow rather than the shoulder? Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, exactly
Okay.
that. Exactly that. So
Okay.
there wasn't really, I wasn't really bringing the shoulder into it at all. And it's something that I'd get out of the hole, I'd start in that position, and then maybe later on down the race, I'd bring the arms in. So that was one of the other things. I started to sort of sync that up a little bit better. Um, and just, yeah, I guess just generally just having sort of like an animalistic sort of throw caution to the wind type of approach to the race. Like the 100-meter sprint, as much as you try to be relaxed and yeah, you want to be efficient and blah blah blah, it's not a meek event.
Yeah.
It's not an event. Like even the best obviously look very smooth and very relaxed and stuff, but they're not it's not meek. This is a very purposeful, a lot of intent, a lot of drive, and them looking relaxed or whatever, exhibiting good mechanics doesn't mean they're not trying. It doesn't mean that they're not
Yeah.
really pressing that run. And I think that's one of the things that I was missing in my quest to try and look pretty, and
Hmm.
technically perfect and on point. I was missing that just pure animalistic, like, when we're kids and you're racing people and it's like you race from one end of the playground to the other. I was just missing that, that
Yeah.
raw
Okay.
kind of like. So there was like a few different things that I sort of brought into my mindset and my way of thinking and my way of executing, and I would just practice that from training day one.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting. Like, and I think I can't remember. It might have been Coach Vince Anderson. I've heard describe the 100 meters as a violent event and kind of
Yeah,
thinking about a violent acceleration and I guess sorry, excuse me. Um, like I mean, we've already mentioned world's fastest accountant. So I imagine that being an accountant, right, you're quite an analytical person, very sort of
yeah,
methodical in your approach, and so
yeah,
um, throwing caution to the wind. Obviously, there's a balance between those kind of like those two sort of ends of the spectrum. So
yeah,
I can imagine that's quite interesting, and I sort of wanted to bring that. We're going to talk a little bit more about the your life as an accountant as in a minute as well, but obviously you're a numbers guy, so kind of going back to the question that I just asked in terms of, I mean, I'm sure you're looking at data and sort of like outliers and averages and all
yeah,
that kind of a stuff and I know that your coach Steve Fudge is sort of like quite big on that as well, kind of like in terms of establishing whether the season has, how successful the season has been, rather than just like one-off performances.
yeah,
He's looking at them as a collective. um so I want to rewind it back. So obviously, let's say you've only been involved in the sport for about 5 years. Although going back for your Power 10, I did find one race, I think in 2006 as an under 15, like a
yeah,
12-1 or something like that. Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I want to throw it way back to when you were growing up and find out a little bit about kind of your sporting childhood. So obviously you did at least one race in track and field. Were there any
Yeah.
other sports that you played when you were growing up?
Yeah, so obviously, I mean, football
Yeah.
was the biggest one. I was definitely that boy growing up, like, oh, I wanted to be a professional football
Hmm.
player.
Hmm.
That didn't quite pan out that way. But yeah, I played Saturday league, I played Sunday league, played for my school, played at uni. So that yeah, I played a lot of football. I mean, when I was young, I felt like I was invincible. I played a lot of different sports, so played a bit of rugby, did a bit of cross country, believe it or not.
Oh,
And I
really?
was
Yeah.
I was pretty decent at cross country actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a couple of little sports here and there, but the main one definitely was football. And then in terms of track and field, I mean, I competed at school, so sort of primary school, secondary school. Um, didn't do it at university, but yeah, just competed at school. Never sort of had any formal track training or joined the athletics club or anything like that. It was just athletics was just one of those things I did for fun because I just enjoyed running. If I could have made football like a career, then yeah, 100% I would have done that. But track was always just oh yeah, I like track. Track's fun. Track's enjoyable. Can get out of lessons early. Get into competitions and stuff. So yeah, why not?
Yeah. Okay. And so what was it? So kind of getting like post uni. Obviously, you've started working as an accountant and stuff like that. Were you still involved in sport at kind of post university age? I mean, I'm
Yeah. So
assuming,
I
right, you haven't just kind of literally just sat on the couch for a couple of years and then kind of like stepped in, sort of, you're
you
doing
know
bits to
what?
stay in shape. Oh, okay, you're gonna,
For the fir- for
yeah,
the
go on.
first couple of years, after I graduated, actually, it's crazy because I never would have thought of myself as this kind of person. But I remember I was that guy. Like, I would just pay my direct debit gym membership every month, and I never went to the gym for like
Right,
2 years. So for 2 years post uni, so I was like maybe 23, 24. I wasn't really going to the gym. I was still playing football.
right,
So I was playing five-a-side. The church I was attending had we were actually part of a football league, like a
right.
church's football league. So I used to play Saturday league football with them. So I was playing lots and lots of football, five-a-side, 11-a-side, seven-a-side. But I wasn't really going to the gym. So I was keeping myself active.
Yeah.
And then yeah, then after that, yeah, I started going to the gym as well. So I just played a lot of football, and then yeah, just recreational gym here and there.
Okay. All right. So it's kind of enough to kind of keep you in shape in order
Yeah, I
to
was in
kind of
shape, 100%. I was definitely in
like
shape.
keep a platform so to start taking up something and building up your training. Um, sorry, excuse me. So world's fastest accountant. I can imagine you're sort of training full time, you're working full time pretty much. You're a family man, so you've got a lot on your plate. How do you go about kind of balancing all these different aspects of your life? I mean, I imagine that's got to be challenging, but as I said before, like fairly analytical, methodical person.
Yeah.
Um, so I assume there's kind of like a process to it. But yeah, I'd love to kind of hear your views on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, man. I would say one slight correction. I'd say I'm a part-time athlete, at least right now.
Okay, all
I'm
right,
st- I'm still waiting for the big brands to
all right.
wake
Watch
up
this
and sign your
space.
boy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But yeah, so definitely, I mean, working a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Like you said, I'm a husband, I'm a father. I'm also a governor on a primary school board. Let me throw that one in
Oh
there.
wow. Okay. All right.
Which is really cool actually. And I mean, I always thought one of the analogies that I really like from my coach, from Steve. He sort of speaks about like your life being this bath, like a bathtub,
Hmm.
and you've got a number of different taps. And if all the taps are flowing at once, the bath's going to overflow quite quickly. And obviously, you don't want to flood the room. So he always speaks about like, making sure like sometimes you're gonna have to shut a certain tap off completely, or you're gonna have to turn a certain tap down, just so you can manage that water level. And I've always really liked that analogy. And I sort of look at my life in that same way of, okay, how do I manage all of these different hats that I wear? I mean, it starts with an incredible support team. I always got to shout out Mrs. because the Mrs. has been, yeah, my wife's been incredible. Just gracing me like to go out and do what I need to do. I mean, I always say to people when me and her got married, which is almost so I qualified as a chartered accountant, got married, and started track all in the same year, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so I said to my missus at the time, I think when I first started, it needed me to be out of the house a couple of evenings in the week, but I don't think either one of us realized what it would be. But she's had to adjust to a lifestyle she didn't realize she was going to live because when she met me, I wasn't doing track. When we got married, I wasn't doing track.
Hmm.
So that's number one. And then my employer. So I think I've been very open and honest about my athletics and what it means to me. And I think they got that, and thankfully they've been very supportive with it. So again, having that kind of support helps, because you don't want to, in the back of your mind, worry that your employer doesn't really like your extracurricular activity and feels like it's gonna take away from your job. They're not like that. So that's great. And I guess for me, it's just being mindful of all the different hats that I wear, and the fact that, sometimes I might be a bit, run down, a bit stretched too thin, and, being aware, okay, if I need to adapt my, so just because I've got a particular program written down doesn't mean I have to do that specific program. If
Yeah,
my
okay.
body's not up to it, the worst thing I can do is just do it anyway and hurt myself. So I think it's also listening to my body, and being mindful of, mental stress, or, that might creep up, in the body. So I think it's one of those things that it can be a difficult balance at times. But I say to people all the time, like, we're all dealt a hand in this life, right? And this is the hand that God's given me. And I've never ever looked at it as like a disadvantage. I'm very
Mm-hmm.
well aware that I'm competing against guys that live, breathe, sleep, drink track and field. So I'm a bit of an outlier. If I look at, okay, I finished 10th at Worlds. The guy that was number 9 is Fred Curley, world champion from last year.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and then obviously, like, Noah Lyles, these are all full-time athletes, all the guys, even the guys behind me, Jacobs, who I finished ahead of, Olympic champ, like, they're all full-time, full athletes with federation support and, big shoe sponsors and all that kind of stuff. And I haven't got any of that. But I never look at it as a disadvantage, really. So I think it's just something to be mindful of, all the different things that I do. But I also think it can be a bit of I embrace it because I think it can be a bit of a competitive advantage. The reason I say that is because I always say to people, like, the outcome of a race, it's not that deep. Really and
Right.
truly, it's not that deep. It's not, there's more significant things going on in my life as a husband or a father, as an accountant, um, that, when I'm out on the track, I can enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? I'm having fun out there. That's why, I'm sure many people see me. I've got a big smile on my face. If you've ever seen me in a warm-up area, I'm probably dancing as well as warming up, because I'm enjoying myself out there. So yeah, I think definitely it can be a tough balance at times, but so long as I've got that good support around me, and I myself am mindful of it, we make it work.
Oh yeah, okay. I like that. I like kind of the way that you sort of having everything else go on maybe kind of gives you a little bit more perspective on life as a whole, and like you say, kind of like what track means. And I sometimes wonder, like, having, I don't want to term the rest of your life as a distraction, but something that can sort of like take you, it makes it easier to switch off from track if you've got other things where you need to put your focus as well, which
Yeah.
I can see that like there being advantages there as well. Um, and then I think that one of the reasons that I really kind of like your story is that I think that you've got kids that want to get involved in athletics and they're still at school, or you've got masters athletes that want to get, or anybody that wants to get involved in athletics recreationally, then they're going to have a lot of the same factors that you're talking about now. They might have a family, that they might be at school or have a full-time job, and it goes to show that that's not necessarily a limitation. Like, you can still be successful with those factors. And speaking about listening to your body, I mean, I think that's key. And out of all the coaches that I know of as well, I feel like you've definitely got one that's very, very cognizant of that kind of, you
Yeah.
know, just because it's written down on a piece of paper doesn't mean that this is, you need to do exactly this. Like,
Yeah.
we're okay adapting and adjusting as we go, depending upon
100%.
how we're feeling.
Yeah, he's a health first type of coach.
Yeah, yeah.
He always is like, all right, cool, let's get healthy first, then let's do some rhythm, and then we slowly build the speed back in. So yeah, 100%, I agree with that.